"Sir, where can I buy a heart for my mom?" The words floated through the hospital corridor, so soft they nearly disappeared beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. Yet they stopped him cold. A man in a dark navy suit turned toward the sound, his phone still in his hand, his schedule still running in his head until he saw her. A little black girl stood there, no taller than his waist, balancing carefully on her crutches. In her small hands she held a spiral notebook, a folded $100 bill tucked neatly inside. Her eyes were wide and certain, not shy, not pleading, just searching for an answer. He blinked, unsure he had heard her right. "A heart?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "The doctor said my mom's heart is too tired. I thought maybe if I had enough money, I could buy her a new one." Behind the glass wall to their right, a woman lay still on a hospital bed. The steady rhythm of the monitor echoed softly, a lonely metronome. The man's gaze drifted from the little girl to the woman beyond the glass. For a reason he could not explain, his chest began to ache. "What is your name?" he asked. "Hope," she said, her voice small but sure. He crouched so their eyes met. "Hope, some things cannot be bought," he said carefully. She tilted her head, a crease forming between her brows. "But you look like someone who can fix things. People like you can fix anything, right?" He tried to smile, but it faltered. There was something in her tone, an innocent faith, that felt heavier than guilt. A nurse passed behind them, whispering to another, "The woman in room 12 still has no family listed." His pulse jumped. He turned back toward the glass. The woman's face was pale, framed by the faint glow of the monitor. Around her neck hung a silver chain with a tiny heart-shaped locket. His breath caught. It looked just like the one he had given someone long ago, before business, before ambition, before he had learned how to forget. Hope tugged gently on his sleeve. "Do you think $100 is enough to help her?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. The ache in his chest deepened, echoing with the sound of the monitor's slow, steady beeping. "No, sweetheart," he whispered at last. "Money cannot buy a heart. But maybe there is another way." "No." Hope nodded softly, as if she believed him before he even knew what he meant. And as he looked at her, this small girl with brave eyes and trembling hands, he felt something stir inside him, something that had been silent for years. The world around them blurred into the quiet pulse of machines and the echo of that single question still hanging in the air. It was the question that would change both of their lives forever. The morning light was pale when he returned to the hospital. The automatic doors slid open with a quiet hiss, letting in the faint chill of early dawn. He had not meant to come back. He had told himself he only wanted to check on a project nearby, but the truth followed him like a shadow. The image of the little girl and her trembling question had refused to leave his mind. Inside, the same rhythmic beeping filled the hall. Nurses moved like ghosts in white shoes, their voices soft, the air carrying the sharp scent of disinfectant and coffee. He found himself walking toward room 12 again. The number seemed to echo with every step. Through the glass, the woman still lay motionless. A nurse adjusted the monitors beside her. The man stood there, watching her chest rise and fall under the thin blanket. He told himself it was concern, simple human empathy, but that was not true. Something deeper had cracked open inside him last night. A soft sound made him turn. Hope stood a few feet away, her crutches steady, her eyes clear despite the sleepless night. Her small backpack hung loosely from one shoulder. "You came back," she said quietly. He nodded, unsure what to say. "I wanted to see how your mom is doing." Hope looked toward the glass. "She is still sleeping. The doctor said her heart is weak, but she is strong. She always is." Her words carried an odd certainty that made him swallow hard. He wanted to ask where she had stayed through the night, if she had eaten, but he sensed she did not want pity. There was a kind of pride in her that demanded respect. "Have you had breakfast?" he asked instead. She shook her head. "I used the vending machine. I got crackers. They were dry, but that is okay." He hesitated, then said, "There is a cafe downstairs. Maybe we can get something warm. Your mom will still be here when we come back." Hope studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but I cannot stay long. If she wakes up, I want to be here." They rode the elevator down together. The silence was not uncomfortable. She watched the floor numbers change, and he found himself watching her reflection in the metal doors. There was a steadiness in her small frame, a calm that did not belong to most children. At the cafe, the waitress gave them a curious glance but smiled politely. They sat by the window. He ordered pancakes and orange juice for her, black coffee for himself. Hope folded her hands on the table. "Do you work here?" she asked. He smiled faintly. She nodded as if she understood. "Mom said people who build things make the world move." He stirred his coffee, watching the steam curl upward. "Your mom sounds wise." "She is. She says everything has a reason, even the hard things." Hope took a small bite of pancake, chewed thoughtfully, then added, "She says sometimes people leave so other people can grow." He froze, the words slicing through him like glass. "She said that?" Hope nodded, unaware of the storm she had just stirred. "She told me that when I asked about my dad, I have never met him, but she said he was good once, just lost." He stared down at the dark liquid in his cup. The sound of the cafe faded around him, replaced by an old memory summer heat, the sound of ocean waves, laughter, and a silver locket catching the Sunday. He blinked hard, bringing himself back to the present. "What would you say to him?" he asked quietly. "If you ever met your dad?" Hope looked out the window, watching cars glide through the morning light. "I would tell him that Mom never stopped loving him, and that I am doing okay. I would tell him I am not mad. People make mistakes." "Oh." Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered in the sunlight. He had no answer. Every word from her felt like a mirror held too close. When they finished eating, Hope wiped her mouth with the napkin and looked at him. "Thank you, sir, for breakfast. I think Mom would be happy you are kind." "You do not need to thank me," he said softly. "Kindness should be normal." She smiled a little. "Mom says kindness is rare because people are busy pretending to be strong." He could not help but smile back. The girl spoke like someone who had seen more life than her years allowed. They rode the elevator back up. When they reached the hallway, a nurse approached them. "Mr. Hale," she said, glancing at her clipboard. "Are you a relative of Miss Rivers in room 12? He hesitated. "No. I am. A friend." The nurse nodded. She had a brief moment of consciousness earlier. She whispered something about Hope's father. Then she went back under sedation. Hope looked up at him, puzzled. "That is strange," she said softly. "Mom does not talk about him much." He forced a calm smile. Maybe she was just dreaming. The nurse nodded and moved on. The air between them felt heavier now. Hope pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection blending with her mother's still figure inside. "She will wake up soon," she said. "I can feel it." He watched her, and for the first time in many years, the world stopped being measured in numbers and contracts. It became a series of heartbeats, hers, her mother's, and his own. He wanted to say something, to tell her who he was, to explain everything that had gone wrong, but the words would not come. They were trapped behind years of silence and pride. Instead, he stood beside her quietly, matching his breath to the steady rhythm of the monitor inside the room. In that stillness, he knew one truth. The little girl had brought him back to the place he had spent years running from, not just the hospital, but his own humanity. And as the machines hummed softly, he realized something else. The heart she wanted to buy was not only her mother's, it was his too, broken and waiting to be found. The sun had shifted higher by the time Hope returned to the waiting area. The hall outside room 12 was quieter now, except for the soft hum of air conditioning and the rhythmic beep from inside the room. Mr. Hale stood near the vending machine, a cup of coffee untouched in his hand. He looked like he had not moved since she left to talk with the nurse. Hope adjusted her crutches and walked toward him with her steady, careful steps. Her little backpack bounced slightly against her shoulder. "The doctor said they will run another test today," she said. "They just need to make sure her heart can keep going." He nodded slowly. "That is good. Tests mean they are still trying." She smiled, faint but real. "Mom always says trying means there is hope." Her name hung between them, heavier now, carrying a meaning neither of them dared to speak. For a moment, neither said anything. Hope set her backpack down and unzipped it. Inside was a small, worn notebook. Its cover was covered with stickers, shaped like stars and hearts, faded from time and handling. She flipped through the pages carefully and stopped on one that had a drawing in crayon, a woman lying in bed, a girl beside her, and a tall man standing nearby. Above it, in crooked handwriting, were the words, "When Daddy comes back." He felt his stomach tighten. "That is a beautiful drawing," he said softly. She nodded. "I made it when I was little. Mom said he might come back one day, and I wanted to remember what it would look like." "Do you remember him?" he asked carefully. She shook her head. "Not really. Just stories. She said he was funny and always smelled like ocean air. She said he built things with his hands." He looked away toward the window, the light glinting against the glass. His mind went back to a beach years ago, the sound of the tide, her laughter, the silver locket that had caught the sunlight when he promised to call and never did. Hope flipped another page. There was a photo taped inside, yellowed with time. It showed a younger version of the woman in the hospital bed, smiling beside a man whose face was partly hidden by shadow. The corner of the photo had been torn, but the outline of the man's chin, the shape of his shoulders, they were unmistakable. His own reflection in the glass matched perfectly. She did not seem to notice his frozen stare. "Mom said he gave her that necklace," she said, pointing at the tiny heart-shaped locket drawn in crayon on the picture, "the one she still wears." His breath caught. He wanted to speak, to confess everything, but the words stayed trapped behind guilt and fear. How could he explain years of absence to a child who only wanted her mother to live? "Hope," he said quietly, "do you ever wish you could ask him why he left?" She looked at him with those clear brown eyes. "Sometimes. But Mom says some people leave because they think they are not good enough to stay. She said maybe he was scared. I think that is sad, not bad." He felt something inside him bend, not break, but shift painfully. "You are very wise," he whispered. She shrugged a little. "Mom says life teaches you, even when you do not ask it to." The door to the hospital room opened, and a nurse stepped out, holding a clipboard. "She is awake," the nurse said softly. "But just for a little while. You can go in, Hope." Hope gripped her crutches and took a breath. "Can you come too?" she asked, turning to Mr. Hale. "She would like you. You talk calm, like the ocean." He hesitated only a moment before nodding. "If you are sure." Inside the room, the light was dimmer. The woman on the bed stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Her skin was pale, but her eyes were still warm, the same soft brown as Hope's. She blinked, seeing the man beside her daughter. "Mom," Hope said gently, moving closer. "This is the man who helped me. He bought me breakfast. He came back." The woman tried to smile. "That is very kind of you, sir," she whispered, her voice weak but sincere. "It is nothing," he said quietly. "Just wanted to make sure you were both all right." "Ugh." The woman's gaze lingered on him longer than expected. Her brow furrowed slightly, as if searching his face for something lost. Then she looked at Hope and touched her hand. "You always find good people, baby." Hope grinned, squeezing her mother's fingers. "He says hearts cannot be bought, but I think he knows where they are found." The woman's lips trembled with a soft laugh, then a wince. The monitor beeped faster for a moment, and he stepped closer instinctively. The nurse checked the screen and nodded. "It is all right, just a little strain." The woman turned back toward him. "Thank you," she whispered again. He wanted to answer, but his throat closed. All he could do was nod. Hope reached into her pocket and pulled out the crayon drawing. "Mom, look, I brought the picture. See, it is you, me, and Daddy. Remember?" The woman looked at it for a long time, her eyes glistening. Then, with a faint trembling smile, she whispered, "Yes, baby, I remember." Ugh. Her gaze shifted to the man standing at the foot of the bed. For a heartbeat, time seemed to hold still. Recognition flickered there, uncertain, fragile, but real. Hope looked between them, confused by the silence. "Mom?" she asked softly. The woman blinked and shook her head slightly, as if forcing herself back to the moment. "Nothing, baby," she said, "just tired." The nurse signaled gently that the visit was over. Hope bent to kiss her mother's cheek. "I will be right outside," she whispered. When they stepped out, Hope exhaled deeply, the kind of sigh that came from carrying too much hope and not enough certainty. "She will get better," she said firmly. He nodded, unable to trust his voice. As they stood together in the hallway, the reflection of the room glowed behind the glass. Inside, the woman touched the locket around her neck, tears slipping quietly down her face. He saw it, and his heart clenched. The truth was no longer a mystery. It was standing beside him on crutches, smiling bravely at a future she did not yet understand. The day grew long inside the hospital, and the air carried the quiet rhythm of machines and the low murmur of nurses walking the corridor. Hope sat by the window in the waiting area, her crutches leaning against the chair. Sunlight pooled across the floor, turning the pale tiles into squares of gold. Mr. Hale stood a few steps away, his gaze fixed on the window of room 12. Her mother had fallen asleep again after the short visit. The doctor had explained that her body was weak but stable, that rest was what she needed most. Hope listened carefully, nodding the way adults did when they wanted to show understanding. Yet when the doctor walked away, she folded her hands and whispered quietly, "Please stay strong, Mom." Mr. Hale turned to her. "You really believe she can hear you?" Hope looked up at him, her expression calm. "I think people can always hear love," she said. "Even when they are sleeping." He felt the words sink deep, steady, and quiet. "That is a beautiful thought." Hope tilted her head. "Mom says when you talk kindly, even walls listen, so I always talk kindly to her heart." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Hope reached for her backpack and pulled out a small jar filled with folded paper stars. Each one was different, some blue, some pink, some made from the edges of old receipts. "What are those?" he asked. "They are promises," Hope said proudly. "Every time I am scared, I write a promise to Mom. Like, I will be brave, or I will make her soup when she comes home. Then I fold it and keep it here." He smiled gently. "How many are there?" She counted quickly in her head. "Maybe 50. I was saving them to show her when she got better." He felt his throat tighten. A jar of paper stars from a child who had already seen too much of the world. There was something achingly pure in it. A nurse came by, her smile kind. "You can visit again for a few minutes, Hope. She is awake." Hope's eyes brightened. She grabbed her crutches and stood up. "Can you come too?" she asked. "She liked when you were there before." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" Hope nodded firmly. "She said you make the room feel calm." He followed her inside. The faint sound of the monitor filled the quiet space. Her mother's eyes were open, soft and tired but still warm. She smiled faintly when she saw them. "Look who came back," she whispered. Hope smiled wide. "I told you he would. He is my friend now." The woman's gaze moved to Mr. Hale. "You must be very kind," she said softly. "Hope does not trust easily." He swallowed, his voice low. "She reminds me of someone I used to know." Her mother blinked, her hand instinctively moving to the locket around her neck. "Someone you lost?" He nodded slightly. "Yes." Hope was busy arranging the jar of paper stars on the bedside table. "Mom, look," she said. "I brought our promises." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "You kept them all?" "Every single one," Hope said proudly. "We still need to add one more. The last one says, 'When we go home.'" The woman smiled weakly, then winced slightly as pain crossed her face. The monitor beeped faster. The nurse adjusted a setting and gave a reassuring nod. Mr. Hale stepped forward. "Should I go?" he asked quietly. Her mother shook her head. "No, stay. It helps her to have someone near." He stood beside Hope's chair, unsure where to place his hands. The moment felt fragile, too sacred for words. "Do you know?" the woman said softly. "Hope has your eyes." The words hung in the air like glass. Hope looked between them, puzzled. "What do you mean, Mom?" The woman hesitated, her eyes flicking to the man's face, searching for courage. "Nothing, baby. I meant, your eyes are kind, like his." Hope smiled, satisfied with that answer. But Mr. Hale's chest tightened. The truth was standing in front of him, wrapped in innocence and sunlight, and he could not speak it aloud. The nurse entered again, signaling gently. "Time to rest now, Miss Rivers." Hope kissed her mother's hand. "I will be right outside, okay?" The woman whispered, "I know you will." As they stepped into the hallway, the door closed softly behind them. Hope turned to him. "Mom likes you. She said your voice sounds safe." He smiled faintly. "Your mom is very special." Hope nodded, hugging her backpack close. She is, but she gets scared when I am not around. I stay as much as I can. He crouched so they were at eye level. Do you have someone to help you? Family nearby? Hope shook her head. It is just us. Sometimes Mrs. Green from next door checks in, but she has her own kids. We do fine. Mom says we are a team. He wanted to say she should not have to be that strong, that a child should not be the one keeping the world together, but he only said, "You really love her." Hope smiled softly. Of course I do. She gave me my name. He looked toward the window again. Through the glass, he could see the woman lying still, her hand resting on the locket. Something inside him broke gently, like ice melting in sunlight. The silence that had followed him for years began to fade, replaced by a quiet, aching warmth. Hope, he said finally, if you ever need help, you can call me. I mean it. She tilted her head, curious. Like a friend? Yes, he said, exactly like that. She seemed to consider it, then smiled. Okay, but friends have to keep promises too. He nodded. Then I will keep mine. They sat together in the hallway until the lights dimmed for evening rounds. Hope leaned against the chair, her eyelids heavy. The jar of paper stars sat safely beside her. For the first time in years, Mr. Hale did not think about meetings or deadlines. He watched over the sleeping child, who had unknowingly reopened his heart, and he felt something unfamiliar peace. Inside room 12, the woman stirred again, whispering into the half-dark, her fingers brushing the locket. You came back, she murmured to no one in particular, tears sliding quietly down her cheeks. Outside, the man who had once left sat in silence, knowing that somehow, in the space between regret and forgiveness, love had found its way home. That night, the hospital grew quiet. The long corridors dimmed to a soft amber glow, and the hum of machinery filled the silence like a lullaby. Hope had fallen asleep in the chair near room 12, her crutches leaning beside her, the jar of folded stars resting against her arm. Mr. Hale sat nearby, his jacket folded neatly over her small shoulders to keep her warm. He had spent years surrounded by people but had forgotten what it felt like to sit beside someone in silence. Each soft breath from the little girl reminded him that the world still had innocence left in it. He glanced toward the window of room 12, where the faint green line of the heart monitor pulsed slowly on the screen. A nurse passed by, smiled, and whispered, "You can rest, sir. We will watch her." He shook his head gently. "It is all right. I will stay." The nurse nodded and continued down the hall, leaving behind the scent of antiseptic and lavender soap. For the first time in years, he was not thinking about business reports or deadlines. Instead, he was remembering laughter in small kitchens, the smell of sea salt, the way love had once felt before ambition took its place. When morning came, the sunlight spilled across the floor in golden lines. Hope stirred, blinking sleep from her eyes. The jacket slipped from her shoulders as she sat up. "Did I fall asleep again?" she asked, embarrassed. He smiled faintly. "Yes, but you needed it." She looked toward the window. "Is Mom awake?" "Not yet," he said. "But the nurse said she had a stable night. That is a good sign." Hope nodded, rubbing her eyes. "Sometimes I dream she is already home. We are sitting at the kitchen table, and she laughs again. She always laughs in my dreams." Her voice trembled slightly, but she smiled through it. Mr. Hale stood. "How about some breakfast?" Hope hesitated. "Can I bring something back for Mom? She likes oatmeal with honey." He nodded. "We can do that." They went downstairs together, the rhythm of her crutches tapping softly on the tile. The cafe was half full of hospital workers. He ordered oatmeal and fruit for her, coffee for himself. While they waited, Hope looked around. "Everyone looks tired," she said. He followed her gaze. "Hospitals are full of people who are fighting for someone they love. That can make you tired." Hope thought for a moment, then said, "But love does not get tired. Just people." He smiled at the truth of it. After breakfast, they returned upstairs. A doctor was waiting outside room 12. He looked at them kindly but with a seriousness that made Mr. Hale's stomach tighten. "She is stable," the doctor said, "but her heart is working very hard. We are doing everything we can." Hope's small hand tightened on the handle of her crutch. "Can I go in?" "Of course," the doctor said, "just for a few minutes." Inside, her mother was awake but pale. Her breathing came slow and careful. Hope climbed onto the chair beside her bed and took her hand. "Mom, I brought you breakfast," she whispered. "Oatmeal with honey, just how you like it." Her mother smiled weakly. "You always remember." Mr. Hale stood near the doorway, silent. He wanted to step closer, but something held him back. The locket around her neck glimmered faintly in the morning light. He remembered buying it years ago, wrapping it in paper, and slipping a small note inside before handing it to her. For luck, for love. The memory hit him like a wave, and he had to look away. Hope was talking softly, telling her mother about the paper stars. "He saw them," she said, pointing toward Mr. Hale. "He said they are beautiful." Her mother smiled at him, her eyes full of unspoken words. "They are her way of keeping the world kind," she whispered. "She started them when she was 6. Hope laughed quietly. "That is true. I thought if I filled the jar, Mom would never get sick again." Her mother brushed a loose curl from Hope's forehead. "You have already given me more strength than any doctor ever could." The nurse came in and checked the monitors. "We will need to let her rest again soon." Hope kissed her mother's cheek gently. "I will be right outside." As they stepped into the hallway, Hope turned to Mr. Hale. "She looks better today, right?" He nodded, though he knew the truth was fragile. "She looks strong. You gave her that." They walked to the waiting area. Hope sat down and opened her notebook. "I am writing a new promise," she said, her pencil moving slowly across the page. "What does it say?" he asked. She smiled without looking up. "It says, when Mom gets better, we will watch the ocean together. She has never seen it. I want to show her." He felt a lump in his throat. "The ocean is big. It never stops moving. Just like love, I suppose." Hope looked up. "Have you seen it?" He nodded. "Yes, many times. It is where I used to go when I needed to remember who I was." "Did it help?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said softly, "but I stopped going after a while. I guess I forgot why it mattered." Hope tore out the page carefully and folded it into a star. She dropped it into the jar and said, "Then you can come with us too, when she gets better." He smiled, surprised. "You would want that?" She nodded. "Yes, you helped us. That means you are part of the story now." He wanted to laugh, but emotion caught in his throat instead. "Part of the story," he repeated quietly. "That sounds nice." As the afternoon light filled the corridor, Hope rested her head on his sleeve. Within moments, she was asleep again, her small hand still gripping the jar of paper stars. Mr. Hale looked through the window at room 12, where her mother lay resting. The beeping monitor echoed like a heartbeat, slow, steady, alive. He knew what he had to do. He could not change the past, but he could be here now. For her, for both of them. And as the sunlight touched the jar of stars, scattering colors across the wall, he made a silent promise of his own he would not leave again. Not this time. The next morning began with an unusual stillness. The hallway outside room 12 was empty, the air carrying the faint echo of distant footsteps. Mr. Hale arrived early, holding 2 cups of coffee, one black, one with cream the way Hope liked it. He had begun to memorize her small preferences without realizing it. But when he reached the waiting area, the chair where she usually sat was empty. Her backpack was gone, her crutches nowhere in sight. A quiet panic spread through his chest. He looked toward the nurse's station. "The little girl, Hope," he said quickly. "She is not here. Do you know where she went?" The nurse frowned, flipping through a chart. "She left very early. She said she had to get something important for her mom. We thought you were with her." His throat tightened. "No, I was not." The nurse looked concerned. "She cannot have gone far. Security can help check the front entrance." He thanked her and turned toward the elevator, his heart pounding in his ears. The morning light outside was soft and gold, washing over the hospital courtyard. Then he saw her across the parking lot, balancing carefully on her crutches, a small paper bag pressed to her chest. He rushed forward. "Hope." She turned, surprised but smiling. "You came," he exhaled, his voice firm but gentle. "What are you doing out here alone?" "You should have told someone." She looked up, unfazed by his worry. "I had to go to the gift shop before they opened. I wanted to get something for Mom. It is her favorite color." She opened the bag to show him a single red scarf, folded neatly. He knelt beside her, his voice softening. "You scared me." Hope tilted her head. "I am sorry. I did not mean to. I just wanted Mom to have something warm." The nurse said the air gets cold at night. He sighed, nodding. "All right. But next time, promise me you will tell someone before you go anywhere." "I promise," she said. They walked back together, her small steps steady on the concrete. She talked as they went, filling the quiet morning with stories about her mother's favorite things, the smell of cinnamon, the sound of rain on windows, the way she hummed old songs when she cooked. When they reached the hospital entrance, the security guard smiled at Hope. "There you are. We were about to send someone looking for you." She grinned. "I was not lost. I knew where I was going." Mr. Hale felt his chest loosen at the sound of her laugh. Upstairs, the nurse met them at the door. "Your mother woke up a little while ago, Hope. She has been asking for you." Hope's face brightened. She hurried inside, the paper bag still in her hand. "Mom, look what I got." Her mother's eyes opened slowly. The red scarf shimmered in the morning light as Hope laid it across the blanket. "It is beautiful," her mother whispered. "Where did you get it?" "The gift shop downstairs. Mr. Hale helped me come back." Her mother turned toward him, gratitude softening her tired features. "You did not have to do that, but thank you." He shook his head. "It was her idea. She is quite determined." Hope smiled proudly. "Mom says if you want something kind to happen, you have to move your own feet first." The woman laughed faintly, her voice fragile but alive. "That sounds like something I would say." The nurse adjusted the IV stand and smiled. "You have a strong little girl." "I know," her mother said quietly. Hope leaned closer to her. "Can you wear it tonight when you sleep? It will keep you warm." Her mother nodded. "I will. But you need to rest too." Hope shook her head. "I am not tired. I can stay right here." Mr. Hale stood near the window, watching the soft scene unfold. The woman's hand rested over Hope's, their fingers intertwined. It was the kind of moment money could never create, the kind that reminded him what love actually looked like. Then, almost too softly to notice, the woman said, "You remind me of someone." Her eyes met his. "Someone I once knew." He swallowed hard. "Maybe I just have one of those faces." But she shook her head faintly, her gaze never leaving him. "No, you have the same eyes, the same quiet way of standing still when you are holding in too many words." Hope looked between them, puzzled. "Mom?" Her mother blinked, forcing a small smile. "Nothing, baby. I am just tired." The nurse stepped forward. "She needs to rest now." Hope squeezed her mother's hand once more, then turned to Mr. Hale. "We will come back later, right?" "Yes," he said softly. "We will." Outside, the hallway was still. Hope sat down, opening her notebook again. "I am writing another promise," she said. He leaned over slightly. "What does this one say?" "It says, I will keep believing even when things look hard." She smiled as she folded the paper into a star. "Mom says faith is just love wearing shoes." He let out a soft laugh. "Your mom has a way with words." Hope nodded proudly. "She says when you say something kind, the world remembers." They placed the new star into the jar together. The sunlight glinted off the glass, scattering reflections across the wall. After a while, Hope leaned back in her chair. "Do you think Mom will really get better?" He looked through the window at room 12, where her mother slept under the red scarf. "I think she is fighting very hard," he said honestly. "And sometimes, love helps more than medicine." Hope's eyes softened. "Then we will keep giving her both." He nodded, his heart heavy but full. As the afternoon stretched on, Hope hummed quietly to herself a song her mother had taught her. Mr. Hale listened, realizing that in this sterile, white hallway, surrounded by machines and strangers, he had finally found something close to peace. For years, he had measured his worth in numbers and deals, but now it was this, a girl with paper stars, a mother with a tired heart, and a promise made in whispers that felt more valuable than anything he had ever built. And deep inside, he knew the truth. They had not only reminded him how to care but also how to stay. By the time evening shadows stretched across the hospital corridor, the air had grown colder. The soft beeping from room 12 echoed faintly down the hall, blending with the rhythmic hum of fluorescent lights. Mr. Hale stood near the vending machine, his hands in his pockets, staring at the reflection of his own face in the glass. He barely recognized the man looking back at him. Hope sat in the chair beside the window, folding another small paper star from the last piece of paper in her notebook. The jar was nearly full now. Her movements were slow and careful, her tongue peeking slightly from the corner of her mouth in concentration. "Done," she whispered proudly, holding it up so it caught the light. Mr. Hale smiled faintly. "That one looks perfect," she beamed. "It is the last one. The promise is, we will all go home together." He nodded, though the words struck him like a quiet ache. "That is a good promise." Hope tilted her head, sensing something in his tone. "You sound sad when you say that." "Zero." He took a breath. "I am not sad, Hope. Just thinking about how much strength love takes." She nodded, as if she understood more than a child should. "Mom says love is heavy because it is full of memories." He smiled softly. "Your mom is right." The elevator door opened, and a nurse stepped out, holding a chart. "Miss Rivers is awake," she said gently. "She has been asking for both of you." Hope stood up quickly, reaching for her crutches. "Let us go." Ugh. Inside room 12, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and flowers. Someone had left a small bouquet on the bedside table, daisies mixed with white roses. Hope climbed carefully onto the chair beside her mother's bed, her crutches leaning against the wall. Her mother smiled when she saw her. "There you are, my sunshine." "Look, Mom," Hope said excitedly, holding up the jar. "I finished it, every promise." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "They are beautiful, sweetheart." "Oh." Hope placed the jar on the table beside the flowers. "Now you have to keep getting better. Because we made all the wishes already." The woman laughed softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I will try my best." Her gaze drifted toward Mr. Hale, who stood quietly by the window. "You have been here every day," she said. "You must have a family worried about you." He shook his head slowly. "No one is waiting." Her brow furrowed gently. "Everyone has someone waiting, even if they do not know it yet." He looked down at the floor, unable to hold her gaze. "Maybe I had someone once," he said quietly. Hope looked between them, her small face curious. "Mom, did you ever have someone before Dad left?" Her mother hesitated, her fingers tracing the silver locket at her throat. "Yes," she said softly. "Someone who meant a great deal to me." Mr. Hale felt his heart stutter. He could almost hear the faint echo of waves, the sound of her laughter carried on the wind. "What happened to him?" Hope asked. Her mother's eyes glistened. "He went away to build a bigger world. I think he forgot that home is not made of walls." Hope frowned slightly. "That sounds lonely." Her mother smiled faintly. "Sometimes people get lost, even when they have everything." The room fell quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Hope reached out and placed her small hand on her mother's. "Then I hope he finds his way home one day." Her mother turned her head toward the window, the sunset glowing orange against the glass. "Maybe he already has," she whispered. Mr. Hale's breath caught. The words were not a question but a quiet recognition, a truth unfolding in slow motion. Her eyes met his, filled with tears and understanding. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world seemed to pause. Hope looked between them, sensing something she did not yet understand. "Mom?" she asked softly. "Are you okay?" Her mother blinked and smiled through her tears. "Yes, baby, I am okay. I am just happy you are both here." The nurse entered then, adjusting the monitor. "Your vitals are good," she said, "but you need to rest." Hope kissed her mother's cheek. "We will be right outside." Her mother nodded. "I love you, sweetheart." "I love you too," Hope said. She turned to Mr. Hale. "Say good night, mister." He hesitated, his voice barely steady. "Good night," he said. "Rest well." Outside in the hallway, Hope leaned against the wall, thoughtful. "Mom looked like she wanted to cry," she said, "but happy tears." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes those are the best kind." Hope yawned, rubbing her eyes. "Can you tell me a story while we wait?" He smiled faintly. "What kind of story?" "About the ocean," she said. Mom said you know the ocean. Oh. He hesitated, then said quietly. Once upon a time, there was a man who thought the ocean was endless. He kept chasing the horizon, trying to find something better. But one day, he realized that the ocean had carried him far away from the people who loved him. And when he finally came back to the shore, he found that love had been waiting the whole time. Hope listened carefully, her eyes wide. Did the man say sorry? Yes, he said softly. He did. In his heart first, and then with his words. She nodded, satisfied. Then it is a happy story. He smiled. Yes, Hope, it is. When she leaned against his arm and drifted off to sleep, he sat still for a long time. The hallway lights flickered, reflecting on the jar of stars glowing faintly under the lamp. Through the glass, he could see the woman resting, her hand still curled around the red scarf. The truth hung silently between them, fragile but real. For years he had built empires and measured worth in numbers, but now, in this quiet hospital, one small girl and her mother had reminded him of something far greater, how it feels to come home. And as the night settled in, Mr. Hale finally understood. The journey he had spent his life taking had not led him to success. It had led him back to them. The next morning arrived quietly, with a soft drizzle outside the hospital windows. The gray light made the hallways seem calmer, more fragile, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Mr. Hale arrived early again, carrying 2 warm muffins from the cafe downstairs. He had begun to memorize Hope's routine, the way she always took a small bite and saved the rest for her mother, the way she hummed softly when she folded paper stars. When he reached the waiting area, Hope was already there. She sat with her crutches beside her and her notebook open on her lap, drawing with a dull blue pencil. She looked up when she saw him and smiled. You came back again, she said. He smiled gently. Of course I did. I brought breakfast. She took the muffin carefully. Thank you. Mom is still sleeping. But the doctor said she might wake up for a little longer today. That is good news, he said. How are you feeling? Hope shrugged lightly. I am okay. I just want her to get better. Sometimes I pretend I can give her my heart instead. Mine works fine. Her words made him stop. You love her a lot, he said quietly. Hope nodded. She is everything. She tells me stories every night, even when she is too tired. She says she wants me to remember the sound of her voice. He swallowed hard. You have a brave mom. Hope smiled, a little proud. She says being brave just means doing the next right thing, even when you are scared. They both turned as a nurse approached. Good morning, Hope, she said kindly. Your mother is awake now. She asked to see both of you. Hope's eyes brightened. Can he come too? She asked quickly. The nurse nodded. Of course. Inside the room, the air was filled with the faint scent of flowers and antiseptic. The woman on the bed was sitting up slightly. Her head turned toward the window. The red scarf was wrapped around her shoulders, a soft contrast to the pale hospital sheets. When she saw them, her eyes softened. You two look like sunshine, she whispered. Hope giggled and hurried closer. I brought you half my muffin. It is banana flavor. Her mother smiled and took a small bite. Delicious. You always share the best things. Hope nodded, pleased. He brought them, she said, pointing to Mr. Hale. The woman's gaze moved to him, and for a moment, her breath caught. You remind me more and more of someone I once knew, she said softly. He felt the air leave his lungs. Maybe you should tell me about him, he said gently. She looked down, her fingers brushing the locket at her throat. There is not much to tell, she began slowly. We met years ago when I worked at a small library by the sea. He used to come in every day, always pretending to read but never really finishing a book. He said he liked the quiet, but I think he liked the company more. Hope leaned closer, her eyes wide. Was he funny? Her mother smiled faintly. He was, in a quiet way. He used to write little notes and hide them between the pages of books. Things like, you make ordinary days feel like sunlight. Hope giggled. That sounds like something from a movie. Her mother's smile trembled. It felt like one. But then one day, he got a job offer far away. He said he would come back once he built something worth sharing. She paused, her eyes glistening. He never did. The room fell quiet. The soft rain tapped against the window like tiny heartbeats. Hope frowned. Did you ever see him again? Her mother hesitated. No, I tried once. But by the time I found where he worked, he was already someone else, someone important. I thought maybe he had forgotten me, so I stopped trying. Mr. Hale's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to confess everything, but fear pinned him still. Hope touched her mother's hand gently. Did he know about me? Her mother looked at her daughter for a long moment, then shook her head. No, sweetheart, he did not. I wanted to tell him, but life got hard. I did not want to be a burden. Hope blinked, but he should have known. A single tear rolled down her mother's cheek. Maybe, but sometimes, keeping quiet feels easier than reopening an old hurt. The silence that followed felt heavy, stretching between all three of them. Finally, Hope said softly, "Mom, if I ever find him, I will tell him you forgave him." Her mother smiled weakly. "You have a heart too big for this world." Hope leaned forward and hugged her gently, careful not to touch the IV line. "I love you," she whispered. Her mother kissed the top of her head. "I love you too, my brave girl." The nurse came in quietly then. "Time to rest again," she said softly. Hope kissed her mother's cheek one last time and stood, gripping her crutches. "I will be right outside." As they stepped into the hallway, the sound of the monitor followed them, steady but faint. Mr. Hale walked beside Hope in silence. The truth now sat heavy in his chest, pressing harder with every heartbeat. He could no longer deny it. The woman inside that room was the one he had walked away from, and the little girl beside him was the piece of his heart he never knew existed. When they reached the waiting area, Hope turned to him suddenly. "You look sad," she said. He forced a small smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" He looked toward the window, the rain streaking down the glass like tears. "About how sometimes life gives you a second chance when you least deserve it." Hope tilted her head, thoughtful. "Then you should take it," she said simply. He looked at her, this small, fierce soul who had unknowingly given him back his humanity, and felt something shift inside him. "I think you are right," he said softly. Hope smiled, satisfied, and began folding another small piece of paper from the corner of her notebook. "What promise is that one?" he asked. She looked up, her eyes bright. "It says, 'No more lost hearts.'" He nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking deep. And as the rain fell harder outside, Mr. Hale finally understood that the time for silence was ending. The truth could no longer stay hidden. It was waiting just like she had been, all these years. The rain had stopped by afternoon, leaving the windows streaked with silver lines that glimmered when the light shifted. The air inside the hospital was warmer now, heavy with the smell of coffee and disinfectant. Hope sat at the small table near the waiting area, her notebook open, the pages wrinkled from use. Mr. Hale sat beside her, his hands clasped loosely together. He had been silent for a long time, lost in thoughts that refused to quiet down. Hope looked up from her drawing. "Do you think Mom will wake up again soon?" He nodded. "Yes, she is strong, remember?" Hope smiled faintly. "That is what she always says. Hearts are like the moon. Even when you cannot see them, they are still there." He smiled at the thought. "She is a poet." Hope giggled softly. "She writes little poems in my notebook sometimes." "Do you want to see?" She turned the notebook around, showing a page filled with uneven handwriting and a small drawing of a heart with wings. He read the words quietly to himself. "If love had legs, it would walk back home. If love had hands, it would never let go." He felt his throat tighten. "That is beautiful," he said. Hope nodded proudly. "She wrote that on my birthday. She said one day I would understand what it means." He took a slow breath. "I think I understand it now." Before Hope could ask what he meant, a soft knock came from the doorway. It was the nurse. "Hope, your mother is awake," she said gently. "She is asking for you again." Hope stood quickly, grabbing her crutches. "Can he come too?" The nurse smiled. "Yes, of course." "Oh." They entered the room together. The light inside was dim, and the steady sound of the heart monitor filled the air. Her mother turned her head slowly toward them. Her skin was pale, but her eyes were bright with a strange calm. "Mom," Hope said, her voice full of relief. "You are awake." Her mother smiled faintly. "I am awake, my love." Hope moved closer, leaning her crutches against the bed. "You scared me," she said softly. I am sorry, her mother whispered. I did not mean to. Mr. Hale stayed near the doorway, his heart pounding in his chest. There was something different about the woman's expression, something that told him she had made peace with a truth she could no longer hide. She looked at Hope first. Sweetheart, she said, remember when I told you people can leave for many reasons, but love never really leaves? Hope nodded. Yes, you said love just changes its address. Her mother smiled weakly. That is right. Then she turned her eyes toward Mr. Hale. And sometimes, it comes back home without needing an invitation. He froze, every muscle in his body tightening. Their eyes met, and for the first time, there were no walls left between them. Hope looked between them, confused. What does that mean? Her mother reached out, motioning for Mr. Hale to come closer. He stepped forward slowly until he stood beside the bed. Hope, her mother said softly, do you remember the story I told you about the man from the library by the sea? Yes, Hope said. The one who left but was not bad, just lost. Her mother nodded, her voice trembling. That man was your father. Hope blinked, silent for a long moment. My dad? Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Yes, sweetheart. I did not tell you before because I was afraid. I did not want you to feel the hurt I once felt. Hope turned slowly toward Mr. Hale. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He knelt beside her, his voice quiet but steady. It is true, Hope. I did not know, not until now. I left thinking I was chasing success, but I lost the most important thing I ever had. Hope's small hands gripped the edge of the blanket. You did not know about me? He shook his head. No, but I should have. I should have stayed. I should have been here. The girl's eyes shimmered with tears, not of anger but of confusion. Mom always said my dad was brave, that he just got lost. He nodded slowly. Your mom was right. I was lost, Hope. I did not know how to love something bigger than myself. But I see now. And I am so sorry. Hope stared at him for a moment that felt endless. Then she looked at her mother. You forgave him, didn't you? Her mother smiled softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. A long time ago. Forgiveness is the only thing strong enough to keep love alive. Hope turned back to him. Her small voice trembled. Then, if Mom forgave you, I think I can too. He felt the breath leave his lungs as he covered his face with his hands, overcome. Thank you, he whispered. You have no idea what that means. Hope reached out, her tiny hand resting on his arm. It means you can stay now, she said simply. Her mother smiled through her tears. You see, Hope, hearts really do find their way back. For a long time, the three of them sat in quiet peace. The rain outside had stopped completely, and sunlight began to filter through the gray clouds. The light touched the red scarf at the woman's shoulders, making it glow like a small fire against the white sheets. Hope reached for her jar of paper stars and held it close. I think this one came true, she said softly. The one that says, when Daddy comes back. Her mother nodded, her hand resting gently over Hope's. Yes, sweetheart, it came true. Mr. Hale sat beside them, the weight of years lifting slowly from his chest. He had spent half a lifetime chasing success and the other half running from regret. But now, in this quiet hospital room, he had finally found the one thing he did not know he was missing: belonging. The monitor beeped softly, steady and sure. The storm had passed, and for the first time in years, the air around him felt like home. Hope looked up at him, her voice no longer uncertain. You are not lost anymore, are you? He smiled through his tears. No, Hope, he said, not anymore. And as she leaned her head gently against her mother's arm, the room filled with a silence so pure it felt like a prayer. It was not the end of something, it was the beginning of everything they had been waiting for. The next morning rose slowly over the hospital, pale sunlight spilling across the quiet city. The storm from the night before had washed everything clean. Inside room 12, the air was calm, filled only with the steady rhythm of the heart monitor and the faint scent of the red roses someone had left on the bedside table. Hope was still asleep, her head resting on her folded arms beside her mother's bed. The small jar of paper stars sat near her elbow, its glass glinting softly in the morning light. Mr. Hale stood by the window, his hands deep in his pockets, watching the light move across the floor. He had not slept. Every thought from the night before echoed in his mind: the truth, the forgiveness, the second chance that had been handed to him without warning. He had spent half his life believing that success could fill the empty space inside him. But standing there now, seeing his daughter sleeping peacefully beside the woman he had once loved, he understood how wrong he had been. The door opened quietly, and the doctor stepped inside. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," she said in a low voice. "May I speak with you for a moment?" He followed her into the hallway. The doctor's face was kind but serious. "Miss Rivers' heart is weakening," she said gently. "She has been fighting very hard, but her body is tired. We can keep her comfortable, but she will need a transplant soon if she is to recover fully." He felt the floor tilt beneath him. "A transplant?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, we have added her to the list, but as you know, these things take time. The best thing you can do now is keep her spirit strong." He nodded slowly. "Thank you, doctor." When he returned to the room, Hope was awake, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Did you talk to the doctor?" she asked. He hesitated. "Yes, she said your mom is very brave." Hope smiled faintly. "She always is." She reached for the jar of paper stars and shook it gently. "I think we need to make another one," she said. "What will this one say?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "It will say, 'Do not give up before the miracle happens.'" He nodded, his throat tight. "That sounds perfect." Hope tore a piece of paper from her notebook, wrote the words slowly, and folded it into a star. Then she placed it on the very top of the jar. "There," she said softly. "Now she has a new promise." Her mother stirred then, her voice weak but clear. "What are you two whispering about?" Hope smiled and moved closer. "A new promise, Mom. You cannot give up. You are going to get better." Her mother looked at her, her eyes full of love and exhaustion. "I am trying, sweetheart. But even strong hearts need help sometimes." Hope held her mother's hand tightly. "Then we will help yours." Her mother smiled faintly and turned to Mr. Hale. "You heard her," she said softly. "You are part of this team now." He nodded. "I will do whatever it takes." She looked at him for a long moment, and something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, regret, forgiveness, everything they had once left unsaid. After a while, Hope leaned back in her chair, humming quietly while her mother rested. The melody was the same one her mother used to sing on nights when Hope could not sleep. It was a song about stars and home and hearts that always found their way back. Mr. Hale stood near the door, watching them. He felt something stirring inside him, not just love, but purpose. He had spent years building companies that made money but changed nothing. Now, for the first time, he wanted to build something that mattered. He stepped out into the hallway and pulled out his phone. "Get me the head of the hospital foundation," he said quietly when someone answered. "I want to discuss setting up a donor program for heart patients, especially children and single parents." He paused, glancing back through the glass at Hope and her mother. "Make sure it starts today." "Dough." When he returned, Hope was drawing again. "What are you making this time?" he asked. She grinned. "A picture of us. Me, Mom, and you. She says you are family now." He felt his eyes sting. "She said that?" Hope nodded. "She said family means people who stay." He crouched down beside her. "Then I am staying. I promise." Later that afternoon, the doctor returned to check on Miss Rivers. Hope stepped aside as they spoke in low voices. The woman's pulse was weak, but her spirit was steady. After the doctor left, Miss Rivers motioned for Mr. Hale to come closer. "You are doing too much," she said softly. "You do not owe us anything." He shook his head. "You are wrong. I owe you everything. Both of you." Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the locket around her neck. She opened it and showed him the tiny photo inside an old picture of them standing together on the beach, years ago. "I kept this," she said quietly. "Even when I was angry, I kept it, because a part of me always believed you would come back." He swallowed hard. "I am sorry it took so long." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it happened exactly when it was supposed to." At that moment, Hope returned with her jar of paper stars. "Mom, can I read some of them to you?" Her mother nodded. "Please do." Hope began unfolding the tiny papers one by one, reading them aloud. "I will be brave. I will help Mom smile. I will believe in good things. She paused, looking up. And this one says, hearts can come home. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears. You wrote that before you even met him. Hope nodded proudly. Maybe I knew. Mr. Hale smiled, unable to speak. The day faded slowly into evening. The soft orange light filled the room as the three of them sat together, bound by promises written on scraps of paper and love that had survived years of silence. Hope leaned her head against her mother's arm. When you get better, can we go see the ocean? Her mother's voice was faint, but steady. Yes, baby. We will go together. Mr. Hale met her gaze, his voice firm. I will make sure of it. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the heart monitor kept its steady rhythm, each quiet beat marking a fragile, beautiful truth. Sometimes the hardest roads lead back to the place you were meant to be all along. The next day began with the soft buzz of morning light filtering through the blinds of room 12. The hospital had its usual rhythm, nurses moving quietly, carts rolling down the hall, and somewhere distant, the faint chime of an elevator bell. Inside the room, Hope was reading from her notebook in a small voice while her mother rested, her eyelids half closed but listening. Mr. Hale stood near the window, watching them. Every time Hope's voice lifted with innocence and care, it reminded him how fragile and beautiful the world could be when seen through a child's heart. Mom likes it when I read, Hope said, glancing up. She says my voice sounds like morning. Her mother smiled faintly. It does. It makes everything feel lighter. Hope grinned and kept reading. This one says, when Mom gets better, we will paint the living room blue like the ocean. And this one says, we will watch the sunset together. She paused and looked at her mother's pale face. You are going to get better, right? Her mother's eyes shimmered. I am trying, sweetheart. Mr. Hale turned, his voice quiet but steady. She will. We are all going to make sure of that. Hope smiled at him. You always say things like you believe them. I like that. He chuckled softly. Then I will keep saying them. Her mother looked at him thoughtfully. She listens to you, she said. You have a calm way about you. It helps. He hesitated before speaking. Maybe because I am learning from her. Hope looked between them, puzzled but smiling. You both talk like you have secrets, she teased. Her mother laughed weakly. Maybe we do, but they are good secrets. A nurse entered then, checking the monitors and writing notes on her chart. Her vitals are stable for now, she said. But we will need to continue observation closely. She smiled kindly at Hope. You are taking such good care of your mom. Hope beamed. I try my best. When the nurse left, Mr. Hale sat down near the bed. Hope, he said softly, you have been so brave through all of this. Has anyone ever told you that? Hope shrugged. Mom says bravery is not about not being scared. It is about doing what is right even when you are scared. He nodded slowly. Your mom is right, and you have done exactly that. Hope reached into her backpack and pulled out another small drawing. It was a simple picture made with crayons, a hospital bed, a little girl beside it, and a man holding both their hands. Above the picture, she had written in large, uneven letters, We are a family now. Her mother stared at the drawing, her eyes filling with tears. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. That is beautiful. Mr. Hale looked at it, speechless. He had spent years surrounded by art, design, and money. Yet nothing he had ever seen had moved him like this small crayon picture. Hope handed it to her mother. When we go home, we can hang it on the wall. Her mother nodded slowly. Yes, baby, we will. A soft knock interrupted them. The doctor stepped in, her expression calm but serious. Good morning, she said. Miss Rivers, we received a message from the transplant center. There may be a potential donor heart available soon. We are waiting for confirmation. Hope's eyes widened. A new heart? For Mom? The doctor smiled gently. It is still early, but yes, there is hope. Hope clasped her hands together. See, the stars worked. Her mother's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. She looked at the doctor. Thank you. The doctor nodded. Rest for now. We will update you as soon as we know more. When she left, Hope jumped up and hugged her mother gently. Mom, it is happening. You are going to get better. Her mother smiled through her tears. Maybe the universe heard all your promises. Hope turned to Mr. Hale. Did you hear that? A new heart? He smiled. But behind that smile was a quiet storm of emotion. The thought of losing her had haunted him every night since he found out the truth. Now, hearing that there was a chance, a real chance, felt like a miracle. "That is wonderful news," he said softly. Hope nodded. "We should make another promise, Star." "What will this one say?" he asked. Hope thought for a moment. "It will say, 'Hearts can find new homes.'" Her mother laughed gently. "That one might be my favorite." As Hope folded the small paper with care, her hands steady and sure, Mr. Hale found himself silently praying not to any god in particular, but to the fragile hope that had brought him here. He had been given a second chance, and he would not waste it. Later that afternoon, while Hope napped in the chair beside the bed, her mother opened her eyes and looked at him. "She loves you already?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "I love her too. I did not think I could, not after all the mistakes I made, but she makes it easy." Her eyes softened. "She has your heart, you know, the way she looks at the world, the way she believes in impossible things, that is you." He blinked hard to keep his composure. "I do not deserve that kind of grace." She smiled faintly. "Maybe grace is not about what we deserve. Maybe it is about what we choose to give." The room fell quiet again, filled only with the steady rhythm of the monitor. When Hope woke, she stretched and looked at both of them. "I had a dream," she said sleepily. "We were at the beach. You were both there. Mom had her new heart, and we built a sandcastle shaped like a big star." Her mother smiled softly. "That sounds perfect." Mr. Hale reached out and touched the jar of paper stars. "Maybe it was not just a dream. Maybe it is the future." Hope's eyes sparkled. "Then we have to keep believing until it happens." Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "We will, my love. We will." As evening fell, the light outside turned golden, painting the room in warmth. Hope leaned her head on her mother's arm, and Mr. Hale stood watching the two of them, the two hearts that had unknowingly kept his alive all these years. For the first time in a long time, he felt peace. Not the kind that comes from having everything, but the kind that comes from being exactly where you are meant to be. The following morning brought a nervous kind of hope to the hospital. The sunlight came in soft through the blinds, falling across the floor in thin gold lines. Nurses moved quickly but spoke quietly, their voices careful, as if not to disturb the fragile peace that lived in room 12. Hope was already awake when Mr. Hale arrived. She sat near her mother's bed, holding her hand and whispering softly. Her small backpack lay open beside her, the jar of paper stars glimmering faintly in the light. "Good morning," he said gently as he stepped inside. Hope turned to him and smiled. "The doctor said they are checking to see if the new heart is a match." "That is good," he said softly. "That means things are moving forward." Hope nodded eagerly. "Mom says she feels different today, like her heart knows something is coming." Her mother smiled faintly. "Maybe it does," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Mr. Hale moved closer, pulling a chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "I am tired," she admitted, "but not the same kind of tired. It feels like my body is waiting for something." He reached for her hand gently. "You have always been stronger than anyone I know." She looked at him, her eyes soft but filled with quiet truth. "I had to be. You were gone." He nodded slowly, guilt pressing down on him, but she squeezed his hand lightly. "Do not look like that," she said. "You are here now. That is what matters." Hope looked up, sensing something tender but unspoken between them. "Mom says love can get sick, but it can heal too," she said thoughtfully. Her mother smiled at her daughter's wisdom. "That is right, baby. And sometimes it takes a long time, but healing always comes if we let it." The room filled with a quiet warmth, the kind that made the air feel heavy but comforting. Just then, the doctor entered, a clipboard in her hand and a calm expression on her face. "Good morning, everyone," she said softly. "I have news. The donor heart is confirmed as a match. We can move forward with the transplant today." Hope gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Today?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, we have to act quickly. The surgical team is preparing everything. Miss Rivers, we will move you to pre-op in about an hour." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, doctor." The doctor smiled kindly. "You have a strong family here. That helps more than you think." She turned to Hope. "You are doing such a wonderful job taking care of your mom." Hope nodded, her voice trembling. Can I see her before the surgery? Of course, the doctor said. You can stay with her until we take her to the operating room. After the doctor left, the room fell silent. Hope looked at her mother with wide, glistening eyes. Mom, are you scared? Her mother smiled softly. A little, but mostly I am grateful. Not everyone gets a second chance. Hope's voice quivered. Promise you will come back? Her mother brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. I promise. I will fight with everything I have. Mr. Hale stepped forward. You are not fighting alone, he said. We will be right here. She looked up at him, her eyes meeting his. You stayed, she whispered. I am never leaving again, he said quietly. Hope climbed gently onto the bed and hugged her mother, careful not to touch the IV lines. I love you, Mom. I love you more, her mother said, pressing a kiss on her daughter's cheek. Keep believing, okay? The stars still work. Hope nodded and pulled the jar closer. I will hold it until you wake up. When the nurses arrived to prepare Miss Rivers for surgery, Mr. Hale helped Hope step back, her small hands clutching the jar tightly. As they wheeled the bed toward the door, Hope called out softly, You are going to be okay, Mom. The stars promised. Her mother turned her head just enough to smile. I know, baby. Then she was gone down the hallway, disappearing behind the white double doors. The waiting began. Hours passed slowly. Hope sat in the waiting area, her legs swinging nervously above the floor, her jar of stars beside her. Mr. Hale brought her water, but she barely touched it. She kept her eyes fixed on the door at the end of the corridor, the one that led to the operating rooms. Do you think she can hear me if I pray? She asked quietly. He nodded. I think she can feel every word you say. Hope closed her eyes and began to whisper softly. Dear God, please take care of my mom's heart. Please make it strong. Please help her come back to me. Her small hands trembled, and he reached out to hold one. She is strong, Hope. She has a reason to come back. Hope opened her eyes and looked at him. Us? Yes, he said. Us. They sat in silence for a long time, the hum of the hospital filling the space around them. Nurses walked by. The scent of coffee drifted from somewhere down the hall, and the soft tick of the clock on the wall marked the slow passage of time. Every few minutes, Hope would whisper another small prayer, or unfold one of her paper stars to read it aloud. This one says, Miracles are just love wearing work clothes, she read softly. Mom wrote that one. He smiled faintly. She always knew how to say things in a way that mattered. As the sun began to set outside, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold, a doctor finally appeared at the end of the corridor. Hope jumped up, her heart pounding. The doctor smiled warmly. The surgery went well. The new heart is strong, and she is stable. She will need rest, but everything looks promising. Hope's eyes filled with tears of relief. She made it? Yes, the doctor said gently. She made it. Mr. Hale placed a steady hand on Hope's shoulder as she whispered, Thank you. The doctor nodded. You can see her soon, but let her sleep tonight. She will need her strength. Hope held her jar of stars close and looked up at Mr. Hale. We did it, she said softly. She is coming back. He smiled, his voice rough with emotion. No, Hope, you did it. She shook her head. We all did. Mom, me, and you. We are a team. He nodded, his chest heavy but full. Yes, we are. As night settled over the hospital, Hope finally closed her eyes, her head resting against his shoulder. The jar of stars sat safely in her lap, glowing faintly in the dim light, a quiet reminder that sometimes faith and love can rewrite even the most fragile stories. The next morning came quietly. The city outside was waking up, but inside the hospital, everything moved slower, softer, as if the world itself was catching its breath after a long night. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm coffee. Hope sat curled up on the waiting room chair, her small hands resting around the jar of paper stars that never left her side. She had not changed her clothes from the day before, and her eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but there was a faint smile on her face. She knew her mother had made it through the surgery. Mr. Hale returned from the cafeteria carrying 2 cups hot chocolate for her and coffee for himself. Good morning, sunshine, he said gently, setting the cup beside her. Hope rubbed her eyes and sat up straighter. Did the doctor say anything? He smiled. Yes, she is still sleeping, but her new heart is working. They said she is strong. Hope let out a small sigh of relief. the kind that came from deep inside. I knew she would be okay. The stars never lie. He chuckled softly. I am starting to believe that myself. Hope looked up at him, her brown eyes bright despite the fatigue. Do you think she can feel it? Feel what? He asked. The new heart, she said. Do you think it knows it belongs to her now? He thought for a moment, his voice low and thoughtful. Maybe hearts do not need time to belong. Maybe they just know where they are supposed to be. Hope nodded as if that made perfect sense. Then it knows. The door at the end of the hallway opened, and the nurse waved them over. You can see her now, but only for a few minutes, she said kindly. Hope's small hands tightened around the jar of stars. Can I bring them with me? The nurse smiled. Of course you can. Inside the room, the light was soft and warm. Machines hummed quietly, steady and reassuring. Her mother lay against the white pillows, pale but peaceful. The red scarf still lay draped at the foot of the bed, its color bright against the clean sheets. Hope climbed carefully onto the chair beside her and placed the jar on the table near her mother's hand. Hi, Mom, she whispered. I brought our promises. They worked. Her mother's eyes fluttered open slowly. When she saw Hope, a small smile formed on her lips. Hey, sunshine, she whispered, her voice weak but full of warmth. Hope reached for her mother's hand gently. You did it, Mom. You really did it. Her mother squeezed her fingers faintly. No, baby, we did it. Her gaze moved past her daughter, landing on Mr. Hale standing near the doorway, and he stayed. Mr. Hale stepped closer, his throat tightening. Of course I did. The woman smiled softly. You have a promise to keep too. He nodded. I remember. No more leaving. Hope beamed. See, Mom? We are a team now. Her mother looked between the two of them, her eyes shimmering with tears. A perfect team. Oh, for a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the gentle rhythm of the heart monitor. The steady beeping, once a source of fear, now felt like a lullaby, a reminder that life had returned. Hope began opening the jar of stars, pulling one out carefully. Can I read one to you, Mom? Her mother nodded, her smile faint but steady. Please do. Hope unfolded the small piece of paper and read aloud, her voice soft and full of love. When you think all the light is gone, remember, you are someone's reason to keep shining. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Did I write that one? Yes, Hope said proudly. You wrote it when I broke my leg and said I would never dance again. Her mother laughed weakly. And you proved me wrong. Hope smiled. Maybe now it is your turn to prove me wrong when I say hearts cannot heal. Mr. Hale could not hold back the tears that had gathered in his eyes. He turned away for a moment, pretending to look out the window, but Hope noticed. Are you crying? She asked gently. He wiped his eyes quickly and smiled. No, just allergies. Hope giggled. Mom says when men say that, they are always lying. Her mother laughed softly. She is too smart for her own good. He nodded. I am starting to see that. They stayed for a while, talking in low voices, laughing softly when Hope made a joke, and simply sitting together when words were not enough. As the nurse came to check the monitors again, she said gently, Miss Rivers, you need rest. The surgery was a success, but your body has to adjust to the new heart. Her mother nodded. I know. She looked at Hope. I am not going anywhere, okay? Just a nap. Hope kissed her mother's hand gently. I will be right outside. Mr. Hale followed her back to the waiting area, where they sat together in the late morning light. Hope was quiet for a while, her small fingers tracing the rim of the jar. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Of course, he said. When Mom gets better, do you think we can really go see the ocean? He looked at her, the memory of the past washing over him, the same ocean where everything had once begun. Yes, he said quietly. We will go together. All three of us. Hope's face lit up. Mom said the ocean sounds like a heartbeat when you listen close. He nodded. It does. And when we go, you will hear it. I promise. She smiled softly, leaning back in her chair. Then it is another promise, Star. He raised an eyebrow. What will it say this time? She tore a small piece of paper from her notebook and wrote carefully before folding it into a neat star. When she was done, she handed it to him. It says, when hearts come home, love starts over. He stared at the small paper in his hand, his chest tightening. "That one might be my favorite," he said. Hope smiled and dropped it into the jar. "Then it is official. No more lost hearts." He nodded slowly, his voice low and full. "No more lost hearts." As the afternoon sunlight filled the room, the jar of stars gleamed brighter than ever. Inside, every folded piece of paper carried a story, a promise made, a prayer whispered, a love reborn. And for the first time in years, Mr. Hale realized that the home he had been searching for was never a place at all. It was right here, in this room, with a little girl who believed in miracles and a woman whose new heart was still learning to beat again. The next few days passed slowly, but with a gentle rhythm that felt almost like healing itself. The hospital no longer felt like a place of fear. It felt like a waiting room for new beginnings. The smell of antiseptic was still in the air, but it mingled now with the faint sweetness of flowers that visitors brought, and the soft laughter that sometimes echoed from room 12. Hope spent most of her time by her mother's side, reading stories, humming little songs, and writing new promises in her notebook. Every morning, Mr. Hale brought breakfast for both of them, the same muffins Hope liked, banana and honey, and stayed until visiting hours were over. The nurses smiled whenever they saw them together. Even they could sense that something sacred had begun to grow between the three. On the fourth morning after the surgery, sunlight poured into the room like a quiet blessing. Hope was helping her mother sit up, arranging the pillows behind her back. Her mother's skin had more color now, and her voice was stronger than before. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" Hope asked, her tone bright. Her mother smiled. "Like my heart is learning to dance again." Hope giggled softly. "Then I think it is doing a good job." Mr. Hale entered just then, holding 2 cups of tea and a small bag. "Good morning, ladies," he said with a smile. Hope grinned. "You always say that like we are queens." He chuckled. "Well, maybe you are." He handed her mother a cup of tea. "Herbal, just how you like it." She accepted it gratefully. "You are spoiling us." He shook his head. "I am making up for lost time." Her smile softened at that. There was no bitterness in her eyes anymore, just quiet understanding. Hope reached into her backpack and pulled out her jar of stars. It was almost full now, the tiny folded papers stacked like treasures of light. "I think we need a new jar soon," she said. Her mother laughed softly. "Maybe we can get one shaped like a heart this time." Hope's face lit up. "Yes, that would be perfect." Mr. Hale looked at the jar thoughtfully. "How many promises do you think are in there now?" Hope thought for a moment. "Maybe 100, maybe more. But I think the best one is still the one that says, 'When hearts come home, love starts over.'" Her mother's eyes glistened. "That one sounds like truth." The nurse came in with a cheerful smile. "Miss Rivers, you are healing beautifully. The doctor will likely move you out of intensive care tomorrow. That is good news." Hope clapped her hands softly. "See, Mom? I told you the new heart likes you." Her mother laughed. I guess it decided to stay. When the nurse left, the room grew quiet again. Hope began to hum softly. The same song she had sung during the long nights when she was waiting for her mother to wake up. Mr. Hale stood by the window, his gaze distant, lost in thought. After a moment, Hope stopped humming and looked at him. "You are thinking a lot again," she said matter-of-factly. He smiled faintly. "I guess I am." Her mother watched him carefully. "What are you thinking about?" He hesitated, then spoke quietly. "About how much time I wasted. About how long it took me to realize what really matters." Her voice softened. "You found your way back. That is what counts." He nodded, but there was a heaviness in his eyes. "I am afraid of losing it again." Hope leaned her chin on her hands. "Then do not leave. That is easy." He laughed gently. "You make it sound simple." She tilted her head. "Because it is. People make things hard when they forget how to be kind." Her mother reached out, touching his hand lightly. "She gets that from you, you know." He looked at her, startled. "From me?" She nodded. "You used to believe that kindness could fix the world. You just stopped believing it for a while." He looked down, the memory stirring something deep inside him. "Maybe I did, but she reminded me." Hope beamed. "See? I am good at reminding people." You are the best," he said softly. That afternoon, As the three of them shared lunch together, hospital food, and all, it felt like something sacred had shifted. The fear that had shadowed the room for weeks was gone. In its place was light, quiet but strong. After they finished, Hope began writing another promise. "What will this one say?" her mother asked. Hope smiled as she wrote carefully. "It says, 'When hearts heal, they grow bigger.'" Her mother nodded approvingly. "That one is perfect." When she finished folding it into a tiny star, she held it out for Mr. Hale. "You get to put this one in the jar." He took it, his fingers trembling slightly, and dropped it into the jar. "I think this is the most important one yet." As the sun began to set outside, painting the walls with soft gold, Hope curled up in the chair beside the bed. "Mom, when we go home, can we plant flowers by the window?" Her mother smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. What kind of flowers?" "Red ones," Hope said. "Like your scarf, so it feels like your heart is growing outside too." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "That sounds beautiful." Mr. Hale looked at them both and felt something settle deep inside his chest, something he had not felt in years. It was peace. It was love that did not need to prove itself anymore. When the nurse came back to check on them one last time before lights out, Hope had already fallen asleep, her head resting on the blanket near her mother's hand. The jar of stars sat beside her, glowing faintly under the soft lamplight. Her mother looked at Mr. Hale quietly. "You gave us back something I thought was gone forever." He shook his head. "No. You and Hope gave it back to me." She smiled, her voice no louder than a whisper. "Then maybe we saved each other." He nodded. "I think we did." Outside, the first stars began to appear in the night sky. Inside, another jar of them shimmered faintly on the table, tiny paper promises that had somehow carried 3 broken hearts all the way home. The next morning arrived with soft light filtering through the hospital blinds, carrying the quiet promise of healing. The beeping of monitors was steady and calm, like a heartbeat reminding everyone that life was still here. Hope sat by her mother's bedside, gently braiding a strand of her own hair. Her little hands moved carefully, the same way she folded her paper stars. Her mother watched her with tired but tender eyes. "Your hands are just like mine," her mother said softly. "They never stop working." Hope smiled proudly. "Because your hands made me, remember?" Her mother chuckled, her voice still weak but steady. "Yes, I remember." The door opened, and Mr. Hale stepped in, holding 2 cups of tea and a small bouquet of fresh red flowers. "Good morning, my 2 favorite girls," he said warmly. Hope's face lit up. "You brought flowers." He nodded. "Red ones, just like you wanted. I thought they might make the room feel more alive." Her mother smiled as he placed them in a vase near the window. "They are beautiful," she said. He turned to her. "Not as beautiful as how you look today." Her cheeks flushed slightly. "Flattery in a hospital room, Mr. Hale? You have not changed." Hope giggled. "You sound like old friends." Her mother smiled faintly. "We are old friends in a way." Hope clapped her hands together. "Then that means we are all friends now." Mr. Hale smiled. "Yes, Hope, we are." The nurse entered then, checking the monitors. "Your recovery is remarkable, Miss Rivers," she said. "You are strong. The doctor may let you go home by the end of the week if everything continues like this." Hope gasped. "Home? Really?" The nurse nodded. "If she keeps healing this well." Her mother reached for her daughter's hand. "Did you hear that, sweetheart? We are going home soon." Hope's smile grew so wide it almost seemed to light the room. "Then we need to start planning. We have to clean the house and make soup and hang our drawings." Her mother laughed softly. "Slow down, sunshine, one step at a time." Mr. Hale leaned against the windowsill, watching them. It was hard to believe how quickly everything had changed. Just a week ago, he had been a man burdened by guilt and distance. Now, standing in this room, he felt lighter, as if the weight of all those lost years had finally lifted. After the nurse left, Hope reached for her jar of paper stars and placed it gently on her mother's lap. "We need to add one more," she said. Her mother smiled. "What should it say this time?" Hope thought for a long moment. Then she said softly, "It should say, 'When love stays, hearts heal faster.'" Her mother's eyes filled with quiet tears. "That is the truest one yet." Mr. Hale took a piece of paper from her notebook and handed it to Hope. "May I help fold this one?" Hope grinned. "Of course, you are good at folding now." Together they folded the small piece of paper, creasing it carefully, then dropped it into the jar. The sound was soft, but it felt like something sacred, like a prayer whispered between three hearts that had finally found each other again. Later that afternoon, while Hope was coloring in her sketchbook, her mother turned to Mr. Hale. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. He nodded. "Anything." "Huh." "When I am well enough to go home," she began slowly, "what will you do? Go back to your world? Back to the life you built before this?" He paused, his gaze moving toward Hope, who was humming softly as she colored. Then he looked back at her. "That life does not feel like mine anymore," he said. "This does." Her eyes softened. "You mean that?" He nodded. "I have spent years surrounded by things that looked like success but felt empty. This is the first time I have felt like I am exactly where I belong." She exhaled, relief and emotion blending in her eyes. "You have changed." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I just finally remembered who I was before I forgot what mattered." She looked down at the red flowers near the window. "You always used to bring me those." He nodded. "Because you said they looked like courage." She smiled gently. "They still do." Hope looked up from her drawing. "What are you two whispering about?" Her mother smiled. "Old stories." Hope frowned playfully. "You should tell me one." Mr. Hale crouched beside her. "All right, here is one. There once was a man who thought love was something you earned. He worked and worked, but he never felt full. Then one day, a little girl with paper stars showed him that love was something you give, not something you win." Hope tilted her head. "Was that man you?" He smiled softly. "Yes, it was." She giggled. "Then that means I am in the story." Her mother laughed. "You are the story, Hope." The room grew quiet again, but this time it was a peaceful quiet, the kind that settles in after long storms. As the afternoon sun began to fade, Hope placed her jar of stars beside the vase of flowers. The red petals glowed in the golden light, and the folded papers shimmered faintly inside the glass. Her mother whispered, "I used to think miracles were things that only happened to other people." Mr. Hale looked at her. "And now?" She smiled softly. "Now I know they happen to those who still believe." Hope yawned, her eyelids heavy. "Then I think we are the luckiest miracle ever." Her mother brushed her hair gently. "I think you might be right." Mr. Hale watched them with quiet gratitude. The woman he had once lost, the daughter he had never known, the family he never thought he deserved, all of it had found its way back to him through the simplest thing of all, kindness. As night settled, Hope fell asleep beside her mother's bed, her head resting near the jar of stars. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. Her mother whispered softly, "She is our light." Mr. Hale nodded. "She saved us both." Outside, the moon rose above the city, casting a silvery glow through the hospital window. Inside, three hearts once broken, now whole, beat quietly in harmony, bound together by promises written on paper, sealed with faith, and carried by love that had finally found its way home. Morning sunlight washed over the city in soft gold, and for the first time in weeks, Room 12 felt less like a hospital room and more like a small piece of home. The vase of red flowers by the window bloomed brighter every day, and Hope had placed her jar of paper stars right beside it. The colors of the folded promises shimmered faintly in the light. Hope was humming as she packed her mother's things into a small bag. The nurses had confirmed that Miss Rivers would be discharged by the end of the afternoon. Her mother sat by the bed, wearing a pale blue sweater that Hope had brought from home. Her face still looked delicate, but her eyes glowed with a quiet strength. "Mom," Hope said, carefully folding the blanket. "The nurse said we can go home today. I told her I would help you walk." Her mother smiled, watching her daughter's small hands move with purpose. "You already help me more than you know, sweetheart." Mr. Hale entered then, holding a thermos of warm tea and a small paper bag. "Guess who made breakfast?" he said with a grin. Hope turned around quickly. "You did?" He nodded proudly. "Well, with a little help from the cafe downstairs. But I brought your favorite banana muffins and honey." Hope clapped her hands together. "You remembered." Her mother laughed softly. "You are making her spoiled." He smiled, looking at her. "Maybe I am trying to make up for lost time." The nurse entered to check on Miss Rivers one last time. "Everything looks good," she said warmly. "Your heart sounds strong, and your recovery is ahead of schedule. You can head home after lunch." Hope gasped softly. "Really?" The nurse nodded. "Really. Just remember, She still needs rest and no heavy lifting. Hope nodded seriously. I will take care of her. After the nurse left, Miss Rivers turned to Mr. Hale. I do not even know how to thank you. He shook his head. You do not have to. This is where I belong. She looked down, her voice softer. You could have walked away again. But you stayed. He met her eyes. I made a promise, remember? No more leaving. Hope smiled, her hands resting on her jar. Then we should write that one down too. My do. She tore a small piece of paper from her notebook, wrote carefully, and folded it into a neat star. When she was done, she dropped it into the jar. There, she said proudly. Now it is official. By early afternoon, they were ready. A wheelchair was brought in for Miss Rivers, but Hope insisted on walking beside her, holding one of the handles as if her strength alone could guide them forward. Mr. Hale carried their bags, walking quietly behind them. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped into the bright lobby. The scent of coffee and sunlight filled the space. It felt strange to leave the hospital after so many days, but it also felt like the beginning of something new. When they reached the front doors, Miss Rivers looked up at the sky. It was wide and blue, scattered with white clouds. It feels different, she said softly. Mr. Hale nodded. It is freedom. Hope grinned. It is the world waiting for us. The ride home was peaceful. The hum of the car blended with Hope's quiet humming. She looked out the window, pointing at every bright thing she saw. Look, Mom, the trees are green again. And there's the bakery with the heart-shaped cookies. And oh, there's the mural I helped paint with the neighborhood kids. Her mother smiled, her eyes shining. You always notice the small things, Hope, because the small things are where the good stuff hides, she said. When they arrived at the small apartment, the air smelled faintly of dust and lavender. Hope rushed ahead, opening windows to let the sunlight in. She placed the vase of red flowers on the kitchen table and set her jar of stars beside it. The apartment felt brighter immediately. Mr. Hale carried the bags in and looked around. It is a nice place, he said. Hope nodded proudly. Mom made it nice, even when she was tired. Her mother laughed softly. It is just home, but it is ours. Hope helped her mother settle into the couch, placing a blanket over her legs. There, she said. Perfect. Mr. Hale stood near the window, his hands in his pockets. The sunlight caught the edge of his face, and for a moment, he looked almost unsure. Do you want me to stay for a while? He asked quietly. Miss Rivers looked at Hope, who was already nodding eagerly. Please stay, she said. We can have lunch together. He smiled. I would like that. Hope began setting the table, humming again. This feels like a movie, she said happily. Except better, her mother smiled, because it is real. When they sat down to eat, there was laughter, soft at first, then fuller. Hope told stories about her teachers, her friends, and the dog she wanted to adopt one day. Her mother listened, smiling through each story, while Mr. Hale watched them both with quiet gratitude. After lunch, Hope pulled her jar close and opened it carefully. We should pick one to read, she said. Her mother nodded. Go ahead. Hope reached inside and pulled out one of the older stars, unfolding it slowly. She read aloud, When you think you are alone, love is closer than you believe. The room fell quiet for a moment. Then her mother whispered, That one was true all along. Mr. Hale looked at both of them, his voice low. I used to think love was something that disappeared when you lost it, but I see now it just waits until you are ready to find it again. Hope smiled softly. Then we found it. Yes, her mother said, tears in her eyes. We found it. The three of them sat together in the warm afternoon light, surrounded by the sound of wind through the open windows and the faint scent of red flowers. Hope leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, her eyes beginning to close. Mr. Hale looked at them both, a quiet peace settling over him. He knew that this moment the laughter, the warmth, the simple sound of breathing was everything he had been missing. And as the jar of stars glowed softly on the table beside them, he realized something else. Sometimes, the most extraordinary miracles happen not in grand gestures, but in the simple act of staying. The following morning, sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of the small apartment, painting soft gold lines across the walls. The scent of pancakes and honey filled the air. Hope stood on a small stool by the kitchen counter, carefully flipping pancakes while humming under her breath. Her mother sat at the table, wrapped in her red scarf, her new heart beating strong and steady. She smiled as she watched her daughter move with such purpose. "You are getting good at that," she said softly. Hope grinned. "Because you are teaching me." Mr. Hale appeared from the hallway, still in his rolled-up sleeves, holding 3 plates. "I think that means I get to be the official taste tester," he said playfully. Hope laughed. "Only if you say thank you after every bite." He smiled. "Deal." They sat together at the small wooden table, sunlight spilling over their plates. For a few minutes, there was only the sound of forks tapping and the gentle rhythm of morning peace. Hope took a bite and looked at her mother. "Do you feel stronger today?" Her mother nodded. "Stronger than yesterday." That means your new heart likes our cooking," Hope said proudly. Mr. Hale chuckled. "Or it means she finally has something worth fighting for again." Her mother looked at him, her eyes softening. "I think you might be right." After breakfast, Hope carried her jar of paper stars to the living room. She sat cross-legged on the rug, opening it carefully. The papers glimmered faintly in the sunlight. "We have 127 stars," she announced. Her mother smiled. "You counted them?" "Of course," Hope said. "Each one is a promise, and promises are meant to be remembered." Mr. Hale sat beside her. "Which one is your favorite today?" Hope thought for a moment, then picked a small yellow star. She unfolded it carefully and read aloud. "When hearts find their way home, love does not need to be perfect, it just needs to stay." Her mother whispered. "That one sounds like us." Hope smiled proudly. "It is ours." Oh. Later, they stepped outside for the first time together since leaving the hospital. The sun was warm, and the air smelled of grass and rain. Hope walked between them, her hand holding both of theirs. The world felt wide again, no longer filled with fear, but with quiet wonder. "Mom," Hope said softly, looking up at the sky, "do you think the person who gave you their heart can see you now?" Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "I hope so, sweetheart. I hope they know their heart is being used to love." Mr. Hale looked at both of them, his voice steady. "Then I think they can feel it. Because love never ends, it just changes hands." Hope looked up at him, her eyes bright. "Then we have to keep it safe." Her mother smiled. "We will. All 3 of us. Them." As they walked down the quiet street together, Hope's laughter echoed softly through the morning air, a sound that carried life, forgiveness, and the gentle rhythm of hearts that had finally learned how to stay. The sun rose softly over the quiet neighborhood, bathing the small apartment in gold. Hope was the first to wake. She padded barefoot to the window and opened the curtains, letting in the light. The city was alive again, birds singing, a breeze carrying the smell of rain and blooming flowers. Behind her, her mother stirred on the couch, the red scarf draped loosely around her shoulders. The steady rhythm of her new heart filled the silence. Mr. Hale was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee and humming faintly. "Good morning," Hope said cheerfully. "Today feels different." He smiled. "It does. Maybe because we finally have something worth waking up for." Hope tilted her head. "Like pancakes?" He laughed. "Exactly like pancakes." A few minutes later, they sat together at the small kitchen table. Hope poured syrup too slowly. Her mother laughed softly, and the air felt warm with something simple but rare peace. After breakfast, Hope brought her jar of paper stars to the table. "We need to make a new one," she said seriously. Her mother smiled. "What will it say today?" Hope thought hard, her lips pressing together in concentration. "It will say, 'When hearts stay close, miracles keep happening.'" She folded the paper carefully, dropped it into the jar, and held it to her chest. "That one's for all of us." Her mother brushed a tear from her cheek. "That might be my favorite one yet." Later, they stepped outside together. The air was fresh and cool. Hope walked in the middle, holding both their hands. The street glowed under the morning sun, and every sound, the chirp of a bird, the whisper of leaves, felt like music. "Mom," Hope asked, "does your new heart feel like it belongs now?" Her mother nodded slowly. "It does. Because it beats for both of you now." Mr. Hale looked at her, his voice low. "It is strange, isn't it, how something broken can come back stronger?" Hope looked up at them both, smiling. That is what love does. It fixes broken things. Her mother squeezed her daughter's hand. You are right, sweetheart. Love fixes everything that is willing to be mended. They walked a little farther, passing a small park. Hope ran ahead to the swing set, her laughter ringing through the crisp air. She kicked her feet, going higher, her curls catching the sunlight. Mr. Hale and Miss Rivers stood side by side, watching her. She is the strongest part of both of us, Miss Rivers whispered. He nodded. She is proof that love can outlive mistakes. The wind brushed past them, carrying Hope's laughter back like a song, and in that sound, soft, bright, and endless, was the rhythm of every promise they had made. For the first time, the world did not feel uncertain. It felt alive, full of second chances, and hearts that had finally learned how to stay. The day of the ocean trip finally arrived, the promise they had spoken of for weeks. The morning light shimmered through the apartment windows, and the sound of waves seemed to call them even before they left the city. Hope was the most excited of all. She wore her favorite yellow dress and carried her jar of paper stars tightly against her chest. Her mother, now stronger than ever, moved carefully but confidently. The red scarf wrapped around her neck fluttered lightly in the breeze from the open window. Mr. Hale loaded the small car with blankets, sandwiches, and a cooler full of lemonade. For the first time in years, his smile looked completely unburdened. Ready? He asked, looking at both of them. Hope grinned. Ready for forever. The drive was long but filled with laughter. Hope sang quietly to herself, making up songs about the sky, the birds, and the way the sun danced on the road. Her mother joined in softly, their voices weaving together like an old lullaby. When they finally reached the coast, the smell of salt filled the air. The ocean stretched wide and endless before them, its waves rolling like deep, slow breaths. Hope ran toward the sand, her small footprints marking the path behind her. Mom, Mr. Hale, it looks just like the picture I drew, she shouted, spinning with joy. Her mother and Mr. Hale followed her down to the water. The wind was cool, and the sound of the waves wrapped around them like music. Hope knelt down and began to dig in the sand. We have to build the castle now, she said seriously. The one from my dream. What kind of castle? Mr. Hale asked. The Star Castle, Hope said. The one shaped like a heart. They laughed and joined her, their hands sinking into the sand. Together, they built a small castle with tiny towers and a heart carved in the center. Hope placed one of her paper stars at the top like a flag. There, she said proudly. Now it is real. Her mother smiled, tears shining in her eyes. It is beautiful, Hope. Hope turned to her and whispered, Do you hear it? Hear what? Her mother asked. The ocean. Hope said softly. It sounds like your heartbeat. Her mother's breath caught. She listened, and it was true. The waves rose and fell with a rhythm that felt alive, steady, and full. She knelt down beside her daughter and wrapped her arms around her. Maybe it is, she whispered. Mr. Hale watched them, his heart full. For the first time, he understood what peace really meant. Not silence, not perfection, just this. Being here, with them, watching love rebuild what life had once broken. As the tide rolled in, Hope pressed her jar of stars into the wet sand beside the castle. The glass gleamed in the sunlight. Now they can see our promises, she said. Even the stars in the sky. Her mother kissed her forehead. They already do, my love. The waves whispered around them, carrying away the sound of laughter, the hum of new beginnings, and the soft, steady rhythm of three hearts that had finally learned how to beat as one. The sun began to lower over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The wind carried the scent of salt and wildflowers, and the waves shimmered like liquid light. Hope stood at the edge of the water, her toes buried in the sand, the hem of her yellow dress fluttering around her ankles. She held her jar of paper stars close, the glass glowing softly in the fading sunlight. Behind her, her mother sat on a blanket, the red scarf around her shoulders catching the breeze. Mr. Hale was beside her, his hand resting lightly on the sand, his eyes calm and full. The three of them had spent the entire afternoon laughing, building, and remembering how to be a family again. Hope turned toward them, her voice rising above the sound of the sea. Mom, Mr. Hale, the sky looks like one of our stars. Her mother smiled. It does, sweetheart. Maybe the sky wanted to keep one of our promises. Hope giggled and twirled, her curls glowing in the sunset. Then we have to make the last one. She sat down cross-legged on the sand, pulled a small piece of paper from her pocket, and began to write. Her letters were uneven but careful, pressed with all the love her small hands could hold. When she was done, she folded it slowly into a star. Mr. Hale leaned forward. What does this one say? Hope smiled, her voice soft but steady. It says, love is not something you find. It is something that finds you when you are ready to believe again. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, her hand pressing gently against her chest where her heart beat strong and new. That is beautiful, Hope. It is the last star, Hope said, the one that finishes the jar. She stood and walked to the edge of the water. The waves curled softly around her feet. Then she lifted the jar and held it toward the horizon, where the sea met the Sunday. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. For everything. The light from the setting sun caught the glass, scattering it across the sand like tiny sparks. Her mother and Mr. Hale joined her, standing on either side. Together, they placed the jar down in the sand, just where the tide could reach it. As the waves touched the glass, Hope reached for both of their hands. Now all our promises belong to the ocean, she said. Her mother smiled, her eyes shining. And to the stars. Mr. Hale's voice was quiet but full. And to us. They stood there as the waves whispered over the shore, carrying the light of the stars and the warmth of their hearts into the endless blue. The world felt vast, but not empty. It felt alive with everything they had lost and found again. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, Hope whispered one last time, we kept every promise. Her mother bent down and kissed her forehead. Yes, sweetheart. And because of you, we finally found our way home. The waves rolled in again, soft and steady, like a heartbeat that belonged to all three of them, a rhythm that would never fade, even after the stars were gone.